Good morning, y'all. I have this desk, not sure if you can see much of it, but it's pretty good size and pretty heavy, and it belongs to my customer, and she's having it painted for her husband as a gift. And she wanted gray. The sample picture she sent me was gray, and then she said she really wanted it to be like a green gray, you know what I mean, have a little bit of a green tint to the gray. So I decided to do just the small sample board. So what we're going to do later today on this desk is remove all the hardware, give it a light scuff sanding, clean it with white lightning. I'm removing the handle off of this sample board right now. Giving it a scuff sanding, rinsing it off after we gator hide. Then I will probably, this is pretty slick up here, I'll probably put slick stick on the top, and I don't think I will on the rest of it, and then paint it, you know, whichever color she decides. So this is our sample board. Other things that I have out are craft sticks. I use these for star sticks. Little containers to do my mixing in. These are called portion control cups. This is a 3.5 ounce. We used to put croutons in these for our cafe. The most common size, like in restaurants where you get ranch dressing and things like that, are a 2 ounce. But you can buy these, I think, by the sleeve on webstrontstore.com. So I use a lot of those. Have my Mr. bottle just in case. I grabbed a handful of chip brushes. These are just the cheap chip brushes. And I got a piece of parchment paper to lay the brushes on. I didn't bring myself a thing of water, but I should have. And I picked up, what do we have? 4 shades of gray. This one's too light. I definitely know that already. That's driftwood. So I'm going to take that one away because we don't want to overwhelm the customer whenever with our sample board. Having 3, I learned this in school. I was in marketing for a decade or so before I became a doctor, before I became an artist. But anyways, when you have 3, that's your small, medium, large, all these things. People almost always pick the center one. And that's when things are priced that way too, like $1, $2, $3. They're always gonna go with the one in the middle. If I was to put, say, 6 or 8 colors on here, then they're going to be, oh, I don't know. They have to start narrowing it down, and it's so much harder than when there's just 3. So I have these 3 grays, but also have these 2 greens. So I need to narrow it down some more. I really believe this manatee gray is too light. I'm going to take it away. And then that leaves, if we were going to go with the straight gray, that leaves Mason-Dixon gray, Hurricane gray, and then the greens. Looking at the desk project, I know she wants a little bit of a deeper gray, more masculine, so I'm going to take away the Mason-Dixon gray. Now I've narrowed it down to, it's going to be this by itself, this plus this, or this plus this. Those are the 3 that we're going to put on our sample board. If I was doing this to be a project to keep or use for something, I would clean this first and all that stuff, but we're not doing that. I'm not worrying about having this stuff on top of the desk because it's going to be sanded in a few minutes anyway and cleaned in a little while. There were just as many greens as there were grays, so let me go into that real quick too in the selection process. If I was to use kudzu, which is a medium muted green, I don't think it would tint the gray enough. If I was to use, limeade or evergreen, the bright green, I feel like she's wanting something masculine and muted, but she's wanting gray to be the main color and a little bit of green. So Palmetto, I've seen it mixed with the grays, and it's way prettier than you think, and they're both pretty muted, so I think that will be good. But just in case she wants it a little bit deeper, I have collard greens. See here with the gray, that's a lot deeper. I always do, or start with, in my mind anyway, a 50-50 mix of the 2 colors to come up with your custom blend, so you'll remember that. You can also either write it on your little lid or write it on a piece of paper and tape it to it so that you remember your formula because it may be, 2 or 3, 4 days before she looks at the sample board and makes her decision. I'm opening the gray here. I'm gonna stir it, and you always stir your paints, no matter what brand, whenever you first open them, because they're, you know, while they're manufactured and mixed up for the pigments and the colors to mix in with all the other stuff that's in there and everything, still the pigments are heavier, so they will try to sink, and then you'll end up with a different formulation throughout your paint, and even, you know, different amounts of the color added to it. So it's always smart, you know, these popsicle sticks, craft sticks, whatever you want to call them, stir sticks, they're cheap. You know, you get like 5,000 in a box or something. I don't always do a sample board, but when I do a sample board, or when I have a customer who doesn't see a color that they love, or they can't decide between 2 or 3, instead of just putting all the pressure on them of, hey, make up your mind, then I can do a sample board where they can see the paint dry, and they can see it side by side with something else, and they can imagine it on their furniture or on their wall or whatever. That's one more thing to keep in mind, is this is so dark. If we go 50-50, that's really going to make this dark. So we'll decide at the last minute on that one. I'm going to grab a chip brush, and I'm just going to mist my brush just a tad to wet it, and mist my board just to have a little bit of a surface to go on here. And this is going to be the plain gray, and I think what I'll do is put it in the middle. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but anything else that you do to it or think that you might can do to it to accentuate it, there's room for that. So I'm going to go all the way top to bottom with this, because I may be able to, say, use a dark wax on the bottom, or use a tinted, you know, wax or a gator hide or something on the top, because all these colors change a little bit as they dry and as they have a top coat added and all those kind of things. So especially having grooves on here, that's going to help with that. So there's the center one. It's on there. It can sometimes make a difference what color your background is. So we could have painted this cabinet door white ahead of time, but it is not that important in this instance, because it's sort of a base color for what we're going to be doing anyway. So I have my little cup out, and I don't have a distinct measurer. and I don't need that much. So I put how much half of that craft stick would hold amount of it, and I'm gonna put an equal amount of this Palmetto. I'm not gonna stir with that one, because I don't want, if I need to dip back in there because I want a little bit more green, I don't want to contaminate the rest of my green with the gray. This is very pretty, but I believe it may be more green than the customer wants. She said she showed her husband the picture of a piece painted with collard greens, and it was a little bit too green. So this is definitely lighter than that. This has almost a teal look to it. I almost want to think it's too green, but the other half of me is like, it's not my place to decide exactly. I feel like this is too green, so I'm going to put a little bit more gray, about half as much as I put the first time. So now we're at 1.5 parts gray to 1 part green. Still very green. And we're going to add more gray one more time. So this is 2 parts gray to 1 part green. This is the color we're going to go with, and we're going to remember that formulation. It is a little more gray than it is green, but it's a very muted color. But I don't know exactly what she's looking at, and I do want to give her options. So I'm going to take new chip brush, mist it, get a little bit of water on there. Let's get it on here. It almost looks like a teal, and I know it's not. Yeah, it almost, let me make sure you can see, it almost looks exactly the same as the background, maybe just a little bit deeper. Hardly looks gray at all. I know it is because I mixed it myself. Very, very pretty color, but I don't know that it's gray green. We'll see. Let's put a lid on it because it does dry out pretty quick. And through this, you will be able to look at how much lighter or darker it dries. Keep that in consideration. 1 part gray. This is, what gray? Hurricane gray. And I'm going to go with a 1/2 part collard greens. It's just kind of blending in there. Really, it's lightening up and muting the collard greens is what it's doing. So when you compare it to the actual collard greens, see, it's a lot lighter. This has still the same deep tone of the collard greens, but it's muted and grayed a little. If she says, oh, I almost like this one or not quite that one, I still have all of these here and more of the little cups here and everything. And if she says, I like this one, but it's a little bit too dark, we can pull that sample, add another portion of the gray, and see if she likes it then, and we can do that on the same board. So, say she likes this one, but wishes it was a little bit lighter, I'll add more gray, and then just go from here down, dry it with a blow dryer because the customer will be here waiting at that time, and then she can compare the two. And that's usually all it will take to come up with the color they like. So this is what, you know, I got these. Just get these at any garage sale or whatever that you can find on cabinet doors, and they don't always, when I first started looking for them, I was like, oh, I want the ones that, you know, you can make signs out of and all that. But sample boards are very, very important. And even after I'm done with this sample board for this customer, and I'll write on back everything that I've done here, because I will forget. But after that, I'll save this. I can put it in my booth for other people to see by the grays or by the greens. I can just save it in with a stack of my sample boards and other stuff that I've done for other people in the past. And when somebody comes in and wanting greens or grays again, I'm like, oh, I have one. And I can remember, you know, what I did because I'm gonna write it on back with a Sharpie. And that's it. So I'll let that dry, and then I will call my customer, then start on the rest of this process here of getting it cleaned and the hardware off and all that. So by the time she gets here, I will be ready to mix the final, you know, the final batch of color. Now I done wiped that on my shirt after I knew that I dripped it on myself. See it? I'm estimating with this desk and the size of it, you know, and the sides and all the drawers and all the stuff. And a desk is usually in the middle of the room. You'll have to paint the back of it. And I'm estimating it will, for 2 coats, that it will, and she wants it slightly distressed, so I won't be using aging waxes, I don't think. But I'll use gator hide on the top and satin top coat on the rest. But I'm estimating it will take like 1.5 8-ounce. So since this is going to be a mix, I'm going to take this entire Hurricane Gray and mix in half of this collard greens, and that'll give me enough paint to do the whole dresser in the exact color that I need. So that's how I do it. I would love to know how y'all do it. Thanks, and have a good day.